I don't know about you, but I think that the Recusant is one of the most interesting looking capital ships in all of Star Wars, and probably one of the coolest too. And that is why I am very excited to show you guys this Recusant that I have spent a lot of time working to get right. And yes, it is in scale with the official Invisible Hand and the custom Munificent that I have already made. There's a link in the description to the instructions on Rebrickable if you want to build this thing for yourself. And, well, yes, it's not perfect, and I'll address some of the design compromises a little bit later. If you're a fan of the Separatist, or you just think that the Recusant is cool, then this is definitely a really good option. Plus, there's even a little bit of functionality with this one. Anyways, why not start this video off by shattering my self-esteem and comparing this to some source material for the Recusant. This was a little bit harder to design than the Munificent in the sense that, well, when trying to find reference material, a lot of it seems to only share the same basic shape. So I got to have a little bit of creativity with the greebling down here in the main section. One of the key aspects of the Recusant is its rather skeletal feel, which I think that I managed to capture pretty nicely by using these rounded studs as opposed to plates that would fill up the entire space, as well as leaving some nice little gaps down here between snot bricks on the bottom. And so passing it through sunlight makes it look really cool. But I did have some things to go off of, like the ribbed texture back here that just worked out really well by using some grill tiles. And in some source material, it shows 4 docking ports around this area right here, which I just went ahead and reused the same design that I used in the Munificent because I think that those two pieces look really nice together. I probably had to take the most creative liberties in the engine area because, believe it or not, there's not a lot of material that shows off the back of the engines in a non-blurry fashion, so I just had to give it my best guess. But I think that they look pretty cool nonetheless, despite the possibility that they might be pretty inaccurate in some areas. And one thing that I have started to notice the more I design my own MOCs is LEGO is full of happy little accidents. Like, for example, there's this ribbed panel on the bottom of the Recusant. And, well, LEGO only makes these pieces 1 stud wide, so, like, it just kind of ended up looking like the ribs. Or the fact that this hinge plate ended up making the perfect angle with the Chi-slope underneath the bridge. Like, that was pure coincidence, and I am glad that it ended up that way. LEGO is pretty cool, guys. And LEGO is even cooler when you've got something to go alongside whatever model you have built. This Recusant is in scale with the Invisible Hand, since this is the 1 kilometer variant of the Recusant, although it could be the 2 kilometer variant if you want, because there's like no difference other than the 2 kilometer one has a small hangar bay, and the 2 kilometer one is also the one that we see most often in the Clone Wars, but that's just because, you know, we also see General Grievous a lot. The 1 kilometer variant was the most common one, though. And I'm also pleased to say that it does look pretty nice next to the Munificent that I made just recently. Now, I mentioned some features. So the 2 main ones are obviously these front cannons do swivel. They are just connected by some jumper plates there, so it makes it easy to rotate them. The design with the jumper plates is a little bit less strong, so like if you want to make it stronger and you don't care about the stability, those are easy enough to replace with normal 1x2 or 2x2 plates. The other quote-unquote feature, if you want to call it that, is just the fact that it is super easy to switch it from the 1 kilometer variant to the 2 kilometer variant. All you have to do is take off that grilled slope and get a trans blue tile here, and you can just put it back on and put it right back in where it came from. And now, once you do that on both sides, you got the larger Recusant with the hangar bay. I did not include that tile in the parts list, however, because I know that not everybody who builds this is going to be watching this entire video, and I don't know, I would feel bad if they got confused by having 2 random blue tiles left over when they were all done building it. That's not good customer satisfaction. But that is an option if you want. You just have to add the parts to your wanted list if you wanted it like this. But yeah. And then for handling, the ship is nice and sturdy. Like I mentioned before, this larger turret down here does come off a little bit easily, but like if you prefer the stability over the slight swivel ability, then you can easily just replace that jumper tile with a regular 2x2 plate. Not that big of a deal, I don't think. And aside from that cannon up front, the only other place that you really have to worry about at all are the engines up here. They're only attached with 2 studs. The attachment works just fine if you just want to set it on a shelf or whatever. You know, really the only thing that you got to worry about is if you start smacking it around and making it crash or whatever, but like at that point you kind of want them to come off. I don't know. So yeah, the 3 engines, be a little bit careful, and then the turret up front, but everything else handles just fine. You can shake it around, you can do anything. It's really quite a strong build. And then the last thing that I wanted to touch on would just be some of those design compromises that I mentioned earlier. The biggest one that you guys have probably noticed by now would be this front section of the ship. In universe, the Recusants are very thin and very pointy. And working in such a specific scale, I had to pick between one of them. There was just no way that I was going to be able to do both without it becoming way too big. Either that or structurally unstable. And I went ahead and went with the pointy option because I feel like the pointiness of it is a lot more important than the thinness, though I still managed to get it pretty thin as I possibly could. I took out a lot of bulk that was in the middle just to try and sleekify it. And then the last one would be this area right here. You know, on the official LEGO version, they managed to capture the jaggedness of the panels pretty well on the invisible hand, and the Recusant has a lot of similar paneling to the Providence. I wanted to try and put some round tiles and some darker pieces behind that grill plate right there, but this was as good as I ended up being able to do. Just, you know, you gotta keep it stable, and using a whole bunch of different colors right there was not going to be very stable, like, at all. But aside from those 2 things, I think that the rest of it is pretty good. You know, the underside paneling pokes out just a little bit from the top paneling, is just a little bit wider, which is accurate. The antennas, I put as many antennas up there as possible while still matching the greebling style of the invisible hand, so I think it looks pretty great. The engines, I guess, should be a little bit more squared off, but it is what it is. And well, if you made it this far and you like what you've seen, then there is the link to the Rubricable page down in the description. The parts for this thing are probably going to run you between like $50 and $70, so it is a little bit more pricey than the Munificent, but it is also a larger model with a little bit rarer pieces. But the instructions themselves are only $2, and it ends up looking really great next to the invisible hand and also the Munificent that I made, if you have that. You can actually check out that video on the end screen coming up here in a moment if you're interested to see more about it. But yeah, Recusant, I'm pretty pleased with how it turned out, pretty proud of it. So thanks for watching, and yeah, check out the Rubricable page in the description if you're interested at all.